no, thank you to everyone for joining the session this afternoon. It's great to see so many people make it along. We're really chuffed to be joined by Rebecca and Morag from Weber, who are going to chat to us around some forecasting and predictions for trends in 2022. I'm sure we'll all agree it's a really important part of our job to be able to advise clients on what's coming up and what we should be tapping into. So yeah, really excited to hear from you both. And Rebecca, I'll leave it to you to kick off.
Fab. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so big welcome. Thank you all for being here. So yeah, basically we're going to be chatting today about the Weber forecast. So a quick introduction to me. My name's Rebecca. I am a senior associate at PRCA Scotland, and my remit is really looking after social listening clients and working with Morag and the insights team, as well as kind of day-to-day client work. So I started off as a bit of a floater, but I've now managed to work my way into social listening, and I kind of lead the practice on that here at Weber.
Yeah, I'm Morag. I'm a senior manager at Weber, and yeah, I kind of focus on more account management on our consumer clients, as well as some digital stuff, but increasingly becoming more and more focused on like trends and insights and trends forecasting. So yeah.
So today we're going to chat you through what the forecast is, how we pull it together, as well as some new and upcoming trends you can expect to see develop in 2022. So that we hope that you leave here today with some fun, exciting ideas and thought-provoking inspiration that you can take to clients. So basically we started the Weber forecast. Sorry to be a pain. Could people make sure that they're on mute? I think I can hear some TVs in the background, if that's okay. Awesome, thank you so much. So we started the Weber forecast at Weber Shamrock as we realised that very often some big trends or cultural moments could pass us by. We spend so much time on the day-to-day working with the nitty-gritty with clients, as I'm sure you can all understand, that sometimes a really fun idea will maybe take too long to activate. So we wanted to make sure that we had a kind of operation in place so that we could make our clients aware and make our clients aware. And I think there's someone able to people in the waiting room. Sorry, I think because I'm the host, I'm getting these notifications. But yes, sorry, I wanted to make our clients aware of all these fun things that are happening, so that they're kept up to date with what's timely and what's relevant. Earlier this year, the drum said that creative teams all need to be cultural meteorologists. And that's what we're trying to do at Weber. So we're trying to understand cultural movements, analysing and forecasting to agree. But as you can all understand, and you know, the world as we live in is entirely unpredictable. But really, we don't want to be doing the same thing as everyone else. We want to be creating conversations about our clients and using insights tools and things like social listening to do just that. So each week we provide a dashboard that looks like this. It's a snapshot of trending campaigns, conversations, insights. They're all click throughable, so you can go on and read them directly from the source. So we started the Weber forecast, as I said, at the beginning of the year, and we've managed to build it up internally to our global network, which is really exciting. We usually package a report up in a beautifully templated PDF from our content team, and it heads straight to comms consultants across the network. And we've also been really lucky enough to start packaging up some trends reports for clients too, based on the Weber forecast template, which is great. So a quick, how do we do it? We search high and low for the latest trends. I think Morag could probably contest to the fact that we'll spend hours on this each week, but we really enjoy doing it. And this can kind of range from scouring the lifestyle pages of The Guardian and the Daily Mail to, you know, some other kind of paid for tools that we have access to. So as I said, I do social listening. So one of the main tools that I look at is TalkWalker, because that's able to give me some really cool insights from our clients and the kind of topics that we're surveying there. But other research and insights platforms such as LSN and Mintel are exceptionally valuable. They update each day with new campaigns, brand news, marketing news from around the world, which allows us to kind of extend our remit beyond the UK. But there's also loads of free websites like Pinterest Predict, Type-based, Trend Spotter, which are also really valuable. But yeah, as I say, we try to keep the trends as relevant to our clients, as well as pulling in some different kind of external sources sometimes. But we also like to have a little bit of fun and sometimes include a little update that will give us all a giggle. Morag?
Yeah, so just really quickly, a bit of forecasting basics. So the first thing is to always have a really open mind, so approach things without any prejudice and with a mindset that isn't just going to confirm your own beliefs. So you try and avoid confirmation or expectancy bias when researching your trends. So you don't just want to look for what you believe to be true, because that might mean you miss the unobvious, less obvious cues. The trick to identifying a trend is to look for anomalous change. So this is things like changes in the social or the technological or environmental landscape that indicate a point of difference or might shed new perspective, or maybe even alert us to the fact that something isn't quite right with the status quo. Forecasting is all about identifying those weak signals at the early stages. So a weak signal is something that was first identified in the 70s by a mathematician, and he realized that strategic thinking can often fail because we're overlooking some of the more difficult to detect or weak signals that sit outside our pre-existing mindset. So for example, a weak signal would be perhaps The Ordinary, which disrupted the beauty industry a few years ago with its totally different branding. Next up is clustering. So if you take example, a pair of Nike trainers that automatically attach to a user's foot so you don't have to bend down and tie them up. And you think, what might that have in common with like a beauty website where you can hear the products as well as see them? So they're seemingly random events, but they actually have a kind of bigger joining thread or cluster. So once you explore it, so in the case of the trainers and the beauty products, it's inclusivity. And you really want to think beyond the now and the zeitgeist and always question what's next and not just what's now. And that's really important with forecasting, is always wondering what will happen beyond this trend. And last, it's really important to just be reactive and bold with your ideas. So when you're presenting these trends to clients, you want to offer them a relevant point of view or a chance to like lead on a trend that relates to their business and to see the most authentic success come of it.
So now we're going to chat you through some of what we consider to be the biggest trends that you can look forward to in 2022. So I'm going to start off with the post blah 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 society. So what are consumers expecting of brands in 2022? So we're all familiar with phrases like sustainability, greenwashing, data protection, ethical supply chains and diverse workforces. And we're going to hear more about them moving into 2022. Consumers want to buy from brands who are representative of what they believe. So they want kind of clear, decisive action from brands and governments around the world. But more now than ever, consumers are doing their own research into companies, their CSR initiatives, what they're really doing. And first and foremost, they want to see change, and they want to see measurable progress against goals that they've set. So we know that people are looking at leaders, from politicians to influencers, for clear, trustworthy information, and those who fail to represent their audiences are at risk of being cancelled. But this is something that's across the spectrum. In the UK, according to Reuters, the British trust in the media is actually fairly low. I think it's sitting at around 36%, and it's gained a little bit since coronavirus, but I think it's still 14 points lower than it was before Brexit. So the distrust is, quite rife across society at the minute. But I'm going to show you some examples of where we can see this in action. So we're all familiar with kind of greenwashing, washing in general. But greenwashing, believe it or not, I didn't know this, but it's been in our lexicon since about 1986. So it really isn't anything new. But as you can appreciate, with people like Greta Thunberg, Extinction Rebellion kind of coming to the fore, it's really been propelled again in a way that we haven't experienced before. One such example of this was actually Shell and the London Science Museum. I don't know if you heard about this in relation to COP26, but essentially it was revealed that Shell signed a gagging order, London Science Museum, and they agreed not to publicly criticise Shell as part of the sponsorship deal, and encouraged those concerned about climate change and climate action to describe both the museum and the oil company as greenwashers, and really kind of invalidated the exhibition that was happening at the time. So there was lots of protests in and around the museum. I mean, that's just one of millions of examples of greenwashing, but something that's happened fairly recently that's really kind of damaged opinion of especially the London Science Museum. But one thing to note as well is not just greenwashing. Rainbow washing is something that's been explored over recent years. And we've seen lots of companies adopt kind of rainbow coloured logos and put out statements around Pride Month. But really what's happened more than often is a lot of these brands have been outed as kind of performative allies to the LGBTQ+ community. And these are just kind of examples. But, for example, donating to politicians who have voted against trans rights, etc. People are looking more and more into that these days. It's not so much to say that you are an ally, you have to actually be an ally. So no more time for passive statements and no more time for passive allyship. So whilst brands should be aware of potential cancellation threats, which we're going to talk about in just a little second, it can also have a significant impact on profit margins. So a survey by Top Cashback said that 1 in 4 British shoppers have stopped buying from brands that don't give something back to society, which really says everything in itself. And this kind of hits the crux of Greta's blah, blah, blah statement. Moving into 2022, brands will need to understand how to communicate their ethical and social stances much more effectively and authentically, really. And this will be a big step for brands, as it's not just public facing anymore, it has to be implemented throughout the organisation. Which leads us on to our next point.
Rebecca, I think some people are trying to get in, but I think because you're the host, you've got to let them.
No, you're not getting in. Right, okay, hold on just a second. Can you see like my bar up here? No. Admit all. God, next I'll be cancelled for not letting anyone in.
Sorry, thank you so much. I think that's everyone in now.
No, thank you for letting me know. Awesome. Hi, all the new joiners. I'm just talking about getting cancelled. Okay, I'll just pick right back off if that's all right. Everyone can see. So yes, cancel culture. So more and more brands are falling victim to cancelling. 73% of global consumers are less likely to cancel a purpose-driven company, however. So that stands you in good stead. And what people are saying is the antidote.
Wait, what chapter were we at?
Sorry? We continue.
I think someone just wasn't on mute.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I don't know what chapter. Yes, the antidote to getting cancelled is for brands and organisations to speak up about their values and actions. So really what you need to do is walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So empowered and informed consumers will require evidence that brands are being ethical, and they'll demand action rather than just words. And if they don't fall into their promises, they'll be called out swiftly. And an example we saw of this over the past year or so was with Ben's Original. So Mars, its parent company, rebranded the rice range following criticism that the name and the image promoted racial stereotyping. This was, of course, in relation to the Black Lives Matter movement, and it pointed towards a more inclusive future for the brand. And this was also complemented with a CSR initiative that was aimed to help disadvantaged people get a nutritious meal and have access to more opportunities. So there's some authenticity there. And I've pictured Jessie Nelson here because it's not just brands, it's influencers, it's celebrities. And we all know about cancel culture, but it's just a real effort, especially if we're talking about influencer marketing campaigns. It's really important to know exactly who you're working with and why, and be able to have rationale for that. There's influencers in the States, like James Charles and Shane Dawson come to mind. And then, all of the Love Island celebrities this year who were criticised for going to Dubai. So it's just being really aware of what kind of your audience is prioritising and, what they want to gain from their engagement with you. And finally, on this point, let's see, is it working still? Yes. we're going to talk about becoming accountable. So I've talked a lot about brands having to hold themselves accountable moving forward. And I'm going to have a look at how these brands have done it over the past year. So we have Ace and Tate, which is a US-based eyewear brand. And they were marked as a B Corporation this year. So that's a company who's really committing to transparency and traceability. But in response to this, Ace and Tate published a list of its bad decisions that it's made over its past, so perhaps unethical or unsustainable decisions, and came out and said, listen, we're putting our hands up. We shouldn't have done these things, but we're moving forward and we're going to improve. So that just shows you with consumers aren't looking for perfection, but they're looking for improvement, and they're looking for a way to move forward. Oatly last year were also accused of selling its soul after they had a round of investment that was led by a company that had alleged ties with deforestation in the Amazon. They released a statement saying that change isn't easy, and they listed their reasons for accepting the investment and what they'll be doing in future that aligns with their sustainability-driven goals. I mean, some people took it on board and other people are still boycotting the brand, but at least it's a move in the right direction at least. So for 2022, what's important? Education is important, number one. Let your audiences understand any accreditation that your brand has. So we've pictured the Terra Carta seal there, which is a recently launched accreditation from the Prince of Wales, and it aims to be the ultimate kind of accreditation in sustainability, which is really important. 46% of UK consumers agree that independent ethical certification schemes are far more trustworthy than schemes run by individual brands. So that's important to note moving forward. And brands and governments should be using kind of key metrics that are measurable and accurately reflect the problem that they're trying to solve. And if you don't kind of live up to these, then you can expect to see more cancellations in 2022. And I wonder who you guys all think will be the next brand to go under. But I'll move on to Morag just now, and I'll shut up for a little while.
So the trend that I'll be going through is into the metaverse, which is a really huge term. So we're just going to touch on a few little points within it. But the metaverse is a term that we're all probably familiar with, you know, given our industry, but it's something that isn't in general public awareness yet, and it's only just going to get bigger and bigger over the next few months and years. So it's really exciting. Just on to the next slide. Thank you. Oh, it's the previous one. Okay, just while the slides are updating, I'll just kind of talk about what the metaverse actually is. So it's a really futuristic idea, but it actually comes from the past. So it originated in a 90s sci-fi novel called Snow Crash. And it was about where people use digital avatars of themselves to explain the online world, which sounds really familiar. Is almost 30 years later, the meaning is pretty much exactly the same. It's all about an extension of reality or creating a digital twin of the physical world. So yeah, over the past 3 decades, we've seen a few different iterations of the metaverse. So from the conceptual to the early metaverse platforms like Second Life, or my personal favorite, Habbo Hotel, and then all the way through to things like your Snapchat personalized Bitmojis, and then your big tech companies like Meta, Roblox, and Decentraland today. Next slide, please. So why is it within our 2022 trends? Well, first is that it's the inevitable next step of the internet. More than 3/4 of people worldwide say their everyday lives and activities depend on technology, and almost everyone thinks that technology is the future. So as I mentioned, despite this realization, awareness of the metaverse is still really low. I think it's just over 1/3 of people have heard of it. So there's huge scope for it to explode over the next year. So just moving on to our first trend within the trend, which is scrolling is the new strolling. Been in the news loads recently, but non-fungible tokens, or NFTs as they're kind of commonly known, they mean that you can now actually buy and own items within the metaverse. So brands are getting involved because it's actually an economic business model that they can earn money from. So while to some of us paying for something that doesn't exist in the real world seems really crazy, globally consumers are actually assigning quite high value to digital possessions. So a recent survey found that consumers think a digital house is worth over $76,000 and a piece of art is worth $9,000. So it's really not just about gaming, it's about bringing things together like our finances or shopping or workplaces in one digital universe. So it's just an extension of every aspect of our daily lives. So one aspect of this is shoppertainment, which has really become an expectation of consumers. You know, social media use is up 15% in 2021, and e-commerce grew more in the first 3 months of the pandemic than it did in the last decade. So the metaverse is allowing these two to kind of merge closer together. So an example of this is Gucci, which collaborated with Roblox, which is like a metaverse kind of online platform as part of its 100th anniversary celebrations. So it created a virtual garden concurrently with its real life garden that it launched in Florence. So it was just like the physical space, but online. So you could go, you became an avatar of yourself online and you could walk around different rooms in the world of Gucci and you can try on different looks. So the metaverse was just meaning that a lot of people could be brought closer to fashion and art. And it was a really big success with over 20 million views in just 2 weeks. And just this week, Nike have done something pretty similar with Nikeland, which is also through Roblox. So users can go on, you can participate in online sports games, you can create avatars and dress them in obviously Nike clothing and accessories as well. But as well as fashion, it's also huge in art. Sotheby's have got an online gallery through Decentraland, which is pretty much similar to Roblox. And in it, people can bid on art and digital art, and pieces have already sold for over $3 million, which is crazy. One trend that we think we might start to see over the next few months is a push for greater inclusivity in the digital art world and the metaverse in general. A recent Art Tactic survey found that at least 77% of NFT art sales are still going to male creators. So inclusivity is something that we might see over the next few months. And just on to the next slide. So the next is all about meaningful connection, and that's kind of what one of the metaverse's key benefits is. It's supposed to bring that kind of presence and a sense that you're physically close to people and not just watching them through a window. Something that is obviously accelerated during the pandemic when we couldn't actually physically connect. The metaverse has allowed us to connect more meaningfully online. So Xbox found recently that nearly 2/3 of UK adults played games or connected with friends and family online to stay in touch during lockdown. And to paraphrase a quote from Facebook, the 3D world gives people that chance to control what's around them physically. So for example, if you're in a busy bar online, you can remove background noise or anything uncomfortable, whereas obviously you can't do that in real life. Bumble and Tinder have started to enter the metaverse. So Bumble is apparently planning to make it central to the relaunch of its Bumble BFF platform. And any Tinder users, you'll soon have the chance to explore virtual dating in Singletown, is what it's called, to explore and meet people beyond that 2D screen. And it's definitely going to change the way we work. I'm not sure if we would all agree with Zuckerberg's vision that the future of work will be dominated by VR headsets, but it definitely will bring some benefits, the possibility of digital office environments where avatars of colleagues can work together, or using VR to use distractions, or the ability to use things like Slack or Dropbox while in a virtual space as well. And then finally, quality of life. So there is a lot of negativity metaverse and social media in general, but we're going to focus on how it might actually make life better in this presentation. And one way is in the fitness industry. So recent studies have shown that almost half of people just don't exercise because it's not fun. And obesity in young people has grown loads during the pandemic, as life just became more sedentary. Pokemon Go was obviously a really early example of success in getting people outside and more active, but more brands are getting involved. So you've got your programs like Zwift, which is cycling and running, but we think the kind of over the next year that we'll see this taken even further. So the chance to get all families and different profiles onto platforms like this. And we might even start to see partnerships between brands in the fitness metaverse and companies like Disney as well. It also might help us to treat a generation suffering from loneliness. In the news just today, there's an article on how bored or lonely people in London are visiting A&E departments as they don't know where else to turn, which is really sad. So the metaverse has this potential to help some 9 million Brits that are like supposed to suffer from loneliness. So it removes that barriers to remote communication, which might not be a solution for everyone, but used carefully could have real mental health benefits. And then finally, it's got lots of potential to overhaul how we deliver healthcare. And one of this is using virtual reality for people with dementia. So a recent study equipped patients with a headset and they visited 5 different virtual environments, like a cathedral or a beach. And then after 16 sessions, the patients were better able to retrieve old memories and improve their mood, and really provided a positive mental stimulation for them. So yeah, just to sum up some of the trends for 2022, yeah, the metaverse and advertising. So expect increased use of 3D billboards, in-game advertising to build deeper connections between brands and people. Equality in the metaverse, as I mentioned, it's male dominated. So I think we'll see a push for greater representation. We'll see rising numbers of businesses and countries even entering the metaverse. Barbados was the first country, first in the world to set up an embassy on Decentraland. And then finally, the growth of gamification. So people want brands to bring them enjoyment and joy and not just to sell to them. Oh yeah, and that's just the
Sorry, I forgot
3D
the video.
billboard. I just thought it was quite cool.
Okay, so I'm going to be looking at third trend, which is the roaring 20s and new decadence. So echoing the 1920s, consumers are hoping for a decade of decadence and excess. After spending much of the last 18 months in varying stages of lockdown, people are gearing up for the great re-entry and spending more on making themselves and their homes feel and look good. So I quote here, when humans endure a major crisis, it changes our needs and our way of living. And that's very true. I think we can all agree with that. And once we emerge, we make up for lost time. We're rethinking what's important and we're starting to pursue new lifestyles, new hobbies, etc. So my first point is aesthetics are changing. As lockdowns seemingly come to an end, fingers crossed, we have more opportunities to present ourselves to others, which makes us excited about the clothes we wear, and it encourages people to really, dress the way that they want to, exactly as their heart desires. In one such example, a subsection of the cottagecore trend, princess core and goblin core aesthetics have taken off over the past year. And you'll have seen elements of princess core in the mainstream media, from red carpet gowns to, I think the TikTok hashtag has around 195 million views. And you're also going to be seeing princess core inspired outfits in high street shops. But as I say, people are living in excess. They're enjoying some of the freedoms that lockdown was able to provide, including finding yourself and being more comfortable in your own skin. And one of my favourite parts about lockdown, I don't know about you, but it was really kind of dressing comfortably. But apparently that is getting the boot. So The Guardian reported last week that sweatpants or joggies or whatever are disappearing fast. A company called Entire World, which really took off over lockdown, the kind of comfortable clothes company, has announced that it's kind of going into administration. So again, people are stopping wearing the onesies, I guess, and they're putting themselves out there buying clothes for re-entry into the office, and clothes that will make them feel good, and when they go back out on the street again. But this hasn't just been limited to clothing. Interior decoration has also evolved over the past year, and whilst we've been in our homes, as you all know, we've created multifunctional spaces. So having a desk or an office in your home, maybe a nursery, and many people have decided to kind of surround themselves with the things that they love, which has kind of embraced the maximalism and cluttercore trends. I mean, this also kind of presents a version of you into the world as you start to invite people around to your home again, particularly in the festive period. So really these trends are all about evoking your own sense of personal style, being your true self, and really bringing some of that enjoyment and giddiness into your lifestyle and into your aesthetic once again. So we can really expect to see over the next 12 months, people really starting to, become true them. Party fever. So over the past year, people have been more excited than ever to get together and socialise, celebrate occasions, host their friends, and are pretty much looking for any excuse to do so. Over the summer, we saw lots of people going to the pub, socially distanced, of course, to watch their team in the World Cup. But one of the things that happened in the summer, which was a bit of a turn up for the books, was Junmas. So Aldi was inspired to redo Last Christmas this year in June, and they developed the hashtag Aldi Junmas to go along with that. So people stocked up on mince pies, Christmas crackers, chocolates, and it even inspired some kind of cross-brand collaboration. I think Quality Street and Celebrations get in on the gag as well. So that was something that was really fun and a little bit unexpected, but people did take part and they were keen to. In the States, we all know they love Halloween, and it's a big time for celebration and decoration over there. But people were going all out, and Home Depot actually sold out of this massive 12-foot skeleton that people popped in their front gardens. So people described it as it being the perfect accessory for what's been an extreme couple of years, and people were looking to inject some fun and spontaneity into their lives. Last year, in fact, Waitrose actually recorded a 37% increase in Brits searching for Thanksgiving recipes and products on its website, as users looked for a reason to bring some festive cheer earlier into their home. And I'm sure you'll have already spotted some Christmas trees in your neighbourhoods already going up. I know I have. I tend to think the first weekend in December is acceptable, but people are doing November, which, listen, I'm not gonna judge. But experts have actually said that Christmas decorations make you feel more relaxed and happier in your home. So no wonder we see them going up a wee bit earlier after a tough couple of years. But yeah, looking forward to this Christmas. Over a quarter of UK residents plan to spend more this Christmas than last year due to increased savings over lockdown. Some people have tapped into that. And also because they want to actually make this Christmas special compared to last. 25% of UK consumers also expect this Christmas to be exciting compared to 2020. So I hope you've all got some lovely plans ahead of you. And finally, on this point, unconventional trips. So we've seen an increase in brands engaging consumers in order to inject fun and spontaneity into their lives, hooking onto the trend that consumers are looking for bigger than ever experiences. They've been developing ways to create memorable brand related activities. So one such example was Qantas Flights, who offered Australians a flight to nowhere. So those lucky enough to grab a ticket were able to see some of Australia's biggest tourist destinations, like the Sydney Harbour, from the sky. I think people being tired and locked up in their homes, they snapped up the tickets, and the tickets actually sold out in 10 minutes. So maybe something like this would come off as a stunt, and people would consider it to be pointless. But after the pandemic and people being a bit restless at home, they were really excited to go out and explore be a tourist in their own home. But also we've seen brands like Willy Wonka and KFC tapping into this memorable consumer experience as well. So the Willy Wonka experience created an interactive hotel room with like lickable wallpaper, gobstoppers, chocolate fountains, and they supplied visitors with a golden ticket key card to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the 1971 movie. And equally, KFC did something similar. They created a KFC suite, which had a cinema and a button that you'd press if you wanted chicken delivered to your room. I think would be great. But it was only available for 11 days, so there's that element of exclusivity. But that was also tying in with the 11 herbs and spices that they used to make the KFC chicken. But what can we see over 2022? People are starting to venture out of their homes, and we can expect to see an increase in big events, big personalities, and changes in style. People are wanting to make up for lost time, so they're looking for ways to express themselves, embrace the excess and the big about life, and really just have a good time. They're bored of joggies, they're bored of Zoom calls. They want to make these events hopefully in person very soon. And they're looking to really make a good start into the roaring 20s that was all pictured previously. I'm going to pass over again to Morag.
Yeah, so the slides
There
we go. Kept playing. Yeah, so the next trend we'll talk about is back to basics, which is basically the antithesis of the whole Roaring Twenties movement, but both are running at the same time and they're not necessarily exclusive to each other. But Back to Basics is all about plainness, mediocrity, embracing the fact that life ultimately is meaningless. So it's a mindset that's becoming increasingly more common in younger people, Gen Z, and manifests itself in a lot of different ways. So across tourism and fashion and work, we're finding our way back to our roots, and tradition, reality and normalcy will be our guiding stars going forward. So an analog era reminiscent of the 90s when life was really simple and not all about the likes is really gaining traction. Cassette tape sales have doubled in the past year, and Dua Lipa released her Future Nostalgia album as a cassette. The Nokia brick is coming back and people are just slowing down in their personal lives too. So hobbies like gardening and knitting and jigsaws really took hold over the pandemic. So the first trend that we'll talk about is slow living. And 2022 might be the year that we see the comeback of the small town. The 15-minute city concept is something that sparked conversations with capital cities like Paris, transforming neighborhoods into small 15-minute like segments where everything you need is totally accessible within that 15-minute time frame. Similarly, in Stockholm, the concept of the urban village is catching attention, and it's being thought of as the go-to urban planning solution for a more sustainable future. And it's not just about where we live, it's about how we live too. So the Norwegian phenomenon of slow TV, which is the phrase known to describe marathon television coverage of a really ordinary event in its complete entirety. So for example, a cruise ship sailing around the Norwegian coastline for days attracted millions of viewers on the TV, and then also people went to visit the cruise ship as it was going past their town as well. And things like flower arranging as a form of therapy is also gaining a huge amount of popularity. And then finally, for the first time in modern history, majority of people are actually for car-free streets in cities. So it's actually reflecting in higher interest in public transport and train travel as a slower, more sustainable way to explore cities and the countryside. Sleeper trains are making a big comeback across Europe. There's lots of new services and new companies exploring what sleeper trains can do for the new audience. And we're also seeing workplaces encouraging their employees to take the train and extend work trips. So less flights looks to continue on beyond the pandemic and restrictions. And the concept of the workation, which is the blending of your work trips with your personal trips as well, is really, really popular. So the next trend I'll talk about is the joy of mediocrity. So we are no longer chasing the dream of personal development on the job or traveling the world. Most of us, we just want everything to work okay. So it's increasingly younger generations, and they're wondering why they're even trying when the future feels so uncertain and scary. Sort of a positive nihilism, which is gaining ground. So we're seeing it in areas like meme culture and also in aesthetics like the dark academia trend. So people are finding meaning in the fact that life is meaningless, and that realization is really setting them free. And we're seeing that in fashion choices too. So the fleece is back. Rihanna wore jeans to an Oscars party, and Crocs are this year's must-have fashion item. And it's the content we consume as well. So traditionally boring content is hugely popular on platforms like TikTok, where people want to see everyday real experiences. And there's an opportunity for brands here as well. Like, for example, the pool guy who has millions of views on TikTok, and it's quite therapeutic watching him clean off like scum and stuff off pools. He recently partnered with a B2B storage provider to create really authentic looking content that wasn't overly polished. So there is opportunity for brand partnerships here as well. And then finally, it's all about the aesthetics, and we're seeing pared back aesthetics across homewares, fashion, design. Minimalism is quite an enduring trend, but it's taken on a new relevance during the pandemic, opposed to the kind of hedonistic mindset that some people have taken on. There's also an alternative subculture around buying less and living with the things that you really need, and that's it. So just some key considerations for 2022. The term the genuine influencer, which is unlikely stars, giving creative freedom to creators and really not creating polished content at all. They don't want to sell to you like the kind of traditional influencer might have done. We might see a new way of holidaying, like a lot of the people that are now interested in nature, they're not actually that experienced with things like hiking or climbing or kayaking, but they do want to learn. So we might see some adventure tourism brands also slow down and offer those slower paced trips to accommodate these new types of traveller. The rural cities and shrinking neighbourhoods. I think we'll see the concept of the 15-minute city continue to grow, as well as more people holidaying to remote villages and rural towns to just get away from it all. And then finally, the concept of HOGO, which is the hassle of going out. So we're already seeing HOGO affecting bars and restaurant bookings in the UK. People are just feeling the joy of being in their own space and they don't really want to go out and socialise. Yeah. And this is our final trend, which is all about you, but better. So it's about leveling up your life and creating the very best, happiest version of yourself. So people are leveling up their daily rituals and fine-tuning their lifestyles to suit their new post-pandemic lifestyles. Let's just on to the next slide. So I'll first talk about life hacking, and people are realizing that by making a series of small changes, their lives can improve drastically. So the book Atomic Habits has re-entered bestseller charts alongside books like The Immunotype Breakthrough or This Is Your Brain on Food. Really interested in how our bodies work and how we can just do what we can to feel even better. So things like sleep, maintaining a healthy weight, mental well-being and emotional well-being, they're all listed in the top 5 of a Euromonitor survey into what people think as being healthy. So all around the world, apparently half of people have experienced health issues in the past year. So it's definitely a trend that's going to outlast the pandemic. So one aspect of this is what we eat. So food trends over 2021, they were dominated by a rise of immune supporting foods and ingredients. So using food as medicine, so things like mushrooms, elderberry, vitamin D, and increasingly what's known as beta glucans, which are a source of soluble fiber. And we also saw an explosion of ingredients like CBD, turmeric, ginger, as people really recognize the health benefits associated with consuming these. Sleep's also a huge topic of conversation. Apparently, sleep loss related to worrying rose from 14% to almost a quarter of people in Britain this year. So hacks, techniques on how to sleep better, they've all seen widespread coverage in the media, along with a rise in sales of things like weighted blankets that provide coverage. And then we're also seeing a growing spark of interest in microdosing psychedelics among the general population. So an app like Field Trip can take you on a guided trip. So you just input what you've ingested and it takes you on a kind of personalized trip. And it's part of a growing number of companies using psychedelic drugs to treat things like depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses. For the more entry level person, apps like Luminate, they offer psychedelic meditation, which uses only the flashlight of your phone, so you don't ingest anything at all. And then we're moving on to enlightenment and seeking meaning. So the Global Wellness Institute predicts that the wellness industry is going to expand its boundaries to something that might have been considered once taboo. So something like money or death or sex. We're seeing everything from the rise of end-of-life practices like death doulas to people getting real about their money with financial therapy. Traditionally boring mortgage company Habito cashed in with an erotic novel, which was written by the dad of My Dad Wrote a Porno podcast. And it's for couples that are buying their first home together. And it was written around the insight that 1 in 10 couples say that getting a mortgage made their sex lives go limp. And according to Pinterest, modern mystics will be up in 2022. So searches around alternative spiritual methods like manifestation, that was up 54 times year on year. And witch talk and tarot talk, they're also trending on TikTok, Instagram, as well as on platforms like OnlyFans. And finally, businesses are also getting in on the action, so adopting spiritual wellness strategies. And one such business is Samsung, which has incorporated shamanism and mysticism into its business strategy and corporate culture. So we might soon start to see spirituality experts sitting alongside our mental health first aiders. Who knows what's to come? And then my last trend is the Great Resignation, which has been in headlines, you know, loads over the past few weeks. And it's not surprising because almost a quarter of UK consumers are planning to change careers in 2020. Burnout and efficiency cultures just left people wondering what's the point. And they're instead focusing on building careers around their passions. Gallup recently identified that the generation most likely to switch jobs is millennials, and that's mainly due to feeling unattached to their company. It's something that we've looked into at Weber. So there's a whole report on our website about the Great Resignation and what businesses should be doing to retain employees. We're entering what the New York Times call the YOLO economy, and that's just about making your life what you want it to be and how entrepreneurship opens the door to that. So things like social media shopping, like it's becoming easier than ever through TikTok live shopping or Instagram shopping to just set up your shop as a side project or a full-time career. And pandemic bakers are going pro, whether that's Triggs on the Great British Bake Off or an ex-Broadway musical star who started a home delivery bread company, or the numerous pandemic pop-ups that now open full-time premises. Top culinary institutions have seen interest in their courses like 85% in the past couple of years. So we're now starting to see those newly qualified bakers and chefs launch their own ventures. And it's something that's really inspiring to new generations, and you don't have to follow the status quo when it comes to your career. And the last point I'll touch on here is about women who were unfairly impacted by the pandemic. You know, they took the brunt of childcare and housework, and it's women that are leading the Great Resignation and embracing the YOLO economy and the freedom that it offers them. McKinsey and Lean In, they did a kind of joint report into women in the workplace, and they found that women did experience much higher levels of burnout than men during the pandemic. So Shopify has now found that these women are taking back control with their new business ideas, which is really feeling that concept of the mumpreneur. And then, yeah, just some thoughts for the year ahead. I think we'll see a rise in asynchronous work as businesses try to retain their employees. So that basically means that individuals will have the full freedom and they can work according to their schedule. You know, it's not the 9 to 5. You could work overnight if you want, if that's when you work best. Quartz has found that the average meeting has already shrunk by 20% since the pandemic began. People are really working smarter and not harder. Spirituality consultants might become more commonplace, and people turn to spirituality tools to help with anxiety. And we might see a rise of initiatives to support and upskill mothers into entrepreneurship. So yeah, that's just our kind of 5 top trends for the year. And yeah, happy to take any questions, or we've got a slide with our details here if you want to follow up on email. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I know that was very long, but yeah, let us know if you've got any questions. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Morag and Becca. That was really, really good. Unfortunately, I've missed the start. I had a bit of a technical issue, but yeah, no, that was really, really good. I don't know. We've not had any questions in the chat, but does anyone have any? Want to pop yourself off mute and just shout? Let us know. I think one question that I had that I was just kind of thinking, like, that I don't know, maybe might benefit some people, other people as well, is like, you know, you were kind of talking about the kind of rise of like unpolished looking content and things like that. Obviously, that's maybe something that might be difficult to get a client to get on board with. So I don't know, do you guys have any like sort of advice on how to get around that kind of thing? Get over that roadblock, if you like.
I think there was a really good example of a girl that was like using Sprite cans to then make TikTok videos in her like dorm room bedroom. And I think eventually brands, they started to see like how many views she was getting and the great reaction she was getting, and you know, it's the audience they wanted to speak to through TikTok. And then she actually started getting like brand deals. So I think if you can show them like the success of like what's already out there, I guess it depends on like who the client is and who they want to speak to, but I think just like showing them rather than just like telling them like why they should be doing that kind of thing. But don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, I think also, apologies, I've just looked at the chat and there are so many messages like, please let people in, so I'm so sorry that I didn't see them. Yeah, I think that what Morag said is absolutely right. I think user generated content is really key. So this is where things like social listening comes into play, and you know, really keep on top of what your audience are talking about, because if you've got people authentically talking about your brand or your products online, and they're creating traction and people are engaging with it, then it makes sense to tap into that. So that's how you kind of start to build a more authentic relationship, particularly with influencers or, you know, other organizations engaging with you. So I think that, yeah, I think Morag's absolutely right.
Yeah, I don't think you just want to talk, like you wouldn't just let anyone just run with your brand, but if they're already authentically talking about it and you know that they'll represent you in a good way, then I guess giving them that creative control rather than having all the kind of control reins on your side, I guess.
Definitely. I think Rachel's got a question. Yeah, when you go.
Is that okay? So I feel really
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Turning on my camera, I feel like part of the gang. As a client with several agencies, I guess I'm already sold on that kind of authentic influencer, and what did you call it, a genuine influencer, however you say that. So I don't think you'll struggle, Thomas. You sold me already, so I'm really excited about that. But you spoke a little bit about OnlyFans. I was just really interested to hear like how you guys felt about OnlyFans for brand. Like, so I'm coming from a charity perspective, so I work for Worldwide Cancer Research. I know it has a reputation, but I think there's maybe a lot of potential in OnlyFans, you know, selling opinions, selling content. I don't know, what do you guys think? Have you seen anything that works?
We haven't done it personally, but I have seen some like good examples of brands that you can obviously use it. It's got that like perception of being for a specific industry, but like you're seeing like food brands using it. Like I think there was a chicken brand in the US that like created like a private room and OnlyFans, and then it just like had like chicken sizzling away, and then you could just go and join and stuff. So I know it can be like pretty tricky to convince people, but I think it like, I don't know, like you can create like little communities within it, and I guess really speak to people that you want to speak to. And yeah, I'm not sure because we've not actually done it ourselves, but something we can look into and like give you some like thoughts on if you want.
Yeah, I just thought it was someone mentioned it in a call I was in a while ago, just networking, and I thought it was the most absurd thing, but now I keep thinking about it more. I'm like, maybe there is something. I just thought it'd be interesting, like you know.
I think if you do it cleverly, and there's been like brands that have done it and it's gained like loads of coverage, like it's obviously something people have an interest in, and it's a bit different way of advertising like in the original like Instagram, Facebook ways of doing it. So I guess it's quite quirky and fun.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say as well, on that kind of like, you're going to get more cut through if, you know, a bread brand was to do something on OnlyFans. That would be a bit strange, but like it would be interesting to see how that could be done. But yeah, we've not really included OnlyFans in like our platform strategy yet, but it's certainly something we should look into doing.
Yeah, and like Twitch as well. Like I don't know, I just feel like there's maybe a bit more to be done. I don't know, I just thought it would be interesting. Thank you so much though, it's really helpful.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Well, I think we're coming up to I thought someone spoke there.
No, sorry, that was me just saying cool.
You know, I think we're coming up to 5 o'clock anyway, but thanks very much, Morag and Rebecca. That was a really, really good presentation. It was really in depth and hopefully very useful. So yeah, and thanks everyone, of course, for taking some time out your afternoons and joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Much everyone.